Hello again and welcome to Spotlight. Today we're going to feature a local artist. Actually, she's not local, but she is local. Jane Hart. And we're going to feature for the first time Steve Price. Now, what we're going to be talking about initially is going to be a book that Jane put together called Stop Screaming, which the title sort of infatuated, and I was sort of infatuated by the title. But I think we'll leave it to Jane to discuss what that is. But first of all, Jane, can you just tell us, who is Jane Hart?
Jane Hart lives in Sleepy Hollow and Proctorsville and loves being up here. It's home. As a Proctorsville resident once said, it's not your second home, it's your home. And that's very true. I also have a wonderful son and daughter-in-law and grandson who live in Proctorsville and do all kinds of wonderful things. I take up the whole show talking about them. They both ran the marathon yesterday, or whatever day, Monday. And I have switched from writing, which I did for 35 years. I was a journalist and author, and just got tired of that, and went to graduate school in my 50s and got a master's in art therapy. Started doing that and love it, and I work with incarcerated people now, and around the edges I started drawing myself, and then that really took over a lot of my time and my life, and I love it, and I wouldn't give it up for anything. It's me now. So
well, every day I know I look forward on Facebook to seeing what's the latest graphic that you. Now, how do you like to refer to these? As a drawing, as a cartoon, or what?
I'm not sure. Whatever they are. Some of them are painting, some of them are drawing, some of them are a combination. I have way too many art supplies, and I use them and combine them and just have fun.
Okay.
So.
Now, why did you write Stop Screaming?
Well, I was in a nursing home with a broken foot for more than 2 months a couple of years ago. What year was that?
It was 2 years ago.
Yeah. And
2 years ago.
Right. And I found it was a great, they had a garden there, a beautiful garden, and I draw stuff in the garden. And then I went from realistic to fanciful. And then I started to notice things, and I was drawing grass, and I said, "Oh, wait a second, that's not grass. That's a mouse talking to a tiger," and so that's how it all started. And I had to draw every day, and they got more and more. It kind of took on a life of its own, and still does. And what I love almost as much as the drawing itself is communicating with people who relate to them. And some are friends I send them to every day who are not on Facebook. Some are people who, my Pets by Heart on Facebook, which Pets by Heart refers to the pet portraits I do. And they make very funny comments, and they absolutely regard the creatures and characters who turn up in these drawings as real, and they, they'll try to comfort them and say, now, you might try such and such, and they address them by name, and I love it. It's a strange world, and I love it very much.
Okay, now we're going to be showing a series of some of the drawings that Jane has done, and Jane will be commenting on them. But I do have one question that still puzzles me.
Yes.
And that is, when you're drawing people, that would be what I would call human beings, they're very often represented in an animal format. Is there a reason for that?
There's no reason for any of it. It emerges, and actually I don't have an idea and then seek to draw it or illustrate it. It's that I find these faces in chaos, and develop them. And then sometimes I'll say to Steve, what is this? You know, the drawing is there, and I have no idea what it is. And he says, and comes up with many of the very wonderful captions, or we, you know, discuss them and refine them. And Steve helps interpret my chaos. So
We might interrupt and say that Jane and I are an item. We dated 62 years ago. I was in college. Jane was about to enter college, and we dated for a couple of years, 2 years.
Yeah, until my father was
until
crazy.
Parental.
Yeah, my parents thought we were too serious.
Right, we were
For our
too
age.
serious, and so we were told not to see each other anymore.
Had to return each other's letters,
And that was
painful.
that. I mean, a real Romeo and Juliet breaking up. And Jane went off to her life. I went off to my life. We were both married. We were both divorced. We remarried other people.
and had long, happy marriages.
Long,
from our
happy
respective
marriages until both spouses died 4 years ago, within a month of each other.
Oh, my.
And Jane and I had been in touch via email and caught up over the years. And one condolence letter led to another, which led to a condolence dinner. And there, several months later, I met Jane for dinner, and I looked and said, "That's Jane. That's Jane." So one condolence dinner led to another, and we are.
And my 105-year-old aunt said, you know, go for it. She had,
So you have the proper blessing.
That's
Yes,
right, and
yes.
Jane and I are together, and I like to think of it, we are again Romeo and Juliet on Medicare.
Well, I don't know if Shakespeare intended it quite that way, but it sounds like that's what it is.
He would have approved. He
Now,
would have
I'm
approved.
also assuming that the condolence portion of this is no longer the most appropriate thing.
No. We lost our spouses 4 years ago, and we're.
yes, and we have separate apartments. My apartment is filled with pictures of Stan and things relating to Stan, as Steve's apartment is full of Anne. And this is fine because it's part of who we are. And
Full of cats too.
Yeah, full of
we're
cats,
both we're both allurophiles.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh,
I'm sorry, you're both what? That's a new one on me.
We take pills for it. It's a cat lover, allurophile.
Oh,
Yeah, as
didn't
opposed
know
to an
that.
allurophobe who doesn't like cats.
thank you for adding to my vocabulary.
Oh, just,
Now, Jane, let's begin by looking at some of your drawings. And the first one, I believe, the title is Just Because the Thorntons Shelter Together. Now, can you complete that sentence?
yes, doesn't mean that they agreed on anything.
Okay, now, when you first look at this, for example, on the far left, you see what would look like to me would be a cross between a lion and a dog.
I'm not sure where that is.
On the
but
far right, looks like somebody playing a guitar.
okay. You know, I don't see
No,
any
I mean-
of those, to be honest with you. But I see a human and a rodent on the left, and I see somebody with a mask on the right, and an elephant close to him. So you know, people see
mouse
what
on
they,
the left.
Yeah. But I don't see what you see. But that's fine because you know, it's for you to see what it's in the beholder.
Well, I think it's just, like beauty.
Right,
It's
like
in
beauty.
the eyes of the beholder.
Yes, exactly. It's whatever you see, and you know, some people feel that a character in these is looking sad or looking, and you know, it's not intentional or even conscious on my part.
Okay, well, let's look at the next drawing.
Okay.
Now, this one is the pandemic gave Mickey, I don't know, can you finish that?
No, I have to see it. It gave Mickey a sense of joy, let's say, a sense of discovering a world that he'd been too busy to notice before.
Now, all of these are coming, how much of these are really as a result of COVID and the pandemic?
Well, during lockdown, I did most of them during lockdown and then continued so that I'm still doing them. And now they don't all relate to COVID, but they did for a year and a half. And this one, however, I must admit, I did earlier. I did that when I was working at Sing Sing, and I got the energy for it from the inmates I was working with. At first I didn't draw, I'd just sit there like that as thinking a proper art therapist is there to just absorb. And one of the men said, "Why aren't you drawing?" And I said, "Well, I'm here for you." And he said, "Well, you can be here for us and still draw." So I started to, and they loved it. They'd want to, parse it and say, "Wow." And they put some of them up on the wall and so on. And this is one of those.
Okay, now, the next drawing is one that I particularly like, and particularly the caption. And this is Ryan on Zoom.
Oh, yes.
Was never at a loss for words.
That's right. And I think we all know a Ryan or two.
Now, I'm assuming that's Ryan.
That's Ryan, yes.
Now, notice the teeth.
Yes, I like those.
They're like those of a shark. That's
right.
The first one that comes to mind.
That's true. Yeah. Well, he's obviously having a very good time, regaling his friends or family with his stories. And if you look at their faces, they look a little bored, a little burned out, a little like, Ryan, we have things to say too. There's stuff on our minds. And there's even a bird there who's, as bored as the others, that how long are they going to indulge him?
Okay, now the next one, I think the title of the caption is my favorite.
Oh.
And that is, they said, wait until next year. But this is next year. Now,
right.
That obviously is a baseball player.
Yeah, it's a baseball player, but it's really just a baseball player on the back of somebody's jacket. And the person in the jacket is looking pretty discouraged because, waiting for the baseball season. And, it's meant to sort of convey the impatience or discouragement of all of us when we'd hoped that the pandemic would be over, and it's not.
Okay, now, the next one I think a lot of us can agree with, and this is after a steady diet of 90 days. Now, is this finance or?
No, 90-Day Fiancé.
Oh, okay, fiance, yeah. And then the next word, Kardashians.
Kardashians and Dr. Pimple Popper.
Yeah.
She needed a new thinking cap. Yes, and she definitely did, because anyone who spent all their time during lockdown watching the Learning Channel might have, experience a little loss of usual problem solving or something. I happen to, be addicted to those shows, so.
Okay, now, the next drawing is going to be, and this one I'm really curious about, dealing with a flooded basement on top of a pandemic.
Right.
Now that is something I can relate to.
Yeah, and she's not happy because, they put her on hold and then hang up, as we've all so much experienced with trying to get a human being on the phone when we have a problem. And Raggedy Ann grew up and has the same problems we all have.
Okay, now, The next one is dealing with, it is obviously dealing with the pandemic, and it's entitled, "As the Pandemic Raged On, Weston Felt Safer in the Shark-Infested Waters." I believe that's what
That's what they are, yeah. The shark looks pretty mild, actually. It looks kind of like a wuss of a shark. He looks more fierce with his
that
sword.
looks like very heavy surf, too.
Oh yeah, very heavy surf, right. But Lexington Avenue, of course, the center of Manhattan, New York City, felt dangerous. It felt dangerous. I was uncomfortable with Steve going to the supermarket then. I wished he would just have his food delivered because the city seemed to be a hotbed of COVID, and it seemed better to stay home and or just walk where there's no other human.
Well, I think we've all experienced that feeling,
Yes.
especially during the lockdown when I can remember the number of people who did not want to wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd be walking into particularly a grocery store,
Oh yeah.
and once in a while they would allow them to go through. And you just wondered, my God, does this mean I'm going to catch something?
Yeah, sure.
Well,
Yeah, before the vaccine, it was much scarier.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
now this is the last one we're going to be showing.
Right.
Is Edna noticed much more time than she ever did
No,
before.
That was a misprint.
Now this, I find this particularly fascinating by the objects that you have flying around
Yeah,
her.
right.
What are they?
They're what she sees. They're what she sees. Yeah. She's noticing, maybe we notice the small things that we normally wouldn't when we are forced to have more time, when we can't do the things we're accustomed to doing. We're forced to stay inside or not to go to places we used to go to and enjoy. So, you just have the time and the quiet to notice things, and that can be kind of a gift. You can be happy, not happy about the circumstances, but happy to notice something special that you hadn't, maybe something unpleasant that you hadn't dealt with that you need to rectify. Certainly you connect with more people that you haven't had time to call, and suddenly you can be back in touch. And there were just so many possibilities when we're given the time, and nobody was happy with it. Nobody wanted that, but it was not a bad thing to discover, gee, maybe I can make some constructive use of what I have, because each day is new and special, and you're not going to have it again, so you might as well see what's available.
Well, the thing that struck me about that was time really became a double-edged sword. You, in one respect, from what you just said, the opportunity you had to do sort of a mental growth.
Yeah.
But you also had the tedium and boredom.
If you allowed it
Yeah.
to be such,
Yeah.
many a new day. I mean, every day was an opportunity if you chose to make it an opportunity. If you chose to let time lag, then it was tedium, boredom, and it was an enemy.
Right.
It was one of the beautiful things about Jane's artwork is the ambiguity. The drawings can be anything the viewer wants it to be, and it can change from day to day.
Yeah,
The
definitely.
beautiful thing about going through the book is that you see new things every time you look at the drawings.
Well, I might add that the book contains just a treasure chest of
Thank you.
these concepts. And first when you begin to look at this, you think, well, this is abstract art. And then you begin to, when you start thinking about it, it really is not so abstract. It simply is the way that the way you're displaying the thought of the particular cartoon. But pardon me if I call them cartoons.
Oh, no, that's fine. That's fine.
And the book is available at Barnes & Noble?
But the Barnes & Noble website, that's right, not Amazon for whatever reason. The Barnes & Noble, we're trying to figure out a way for Scott Stearns to sell it at the Book Nook, but at the moment he can't get it from his wholesaler, so it's
can't get it?
Well, I don't know. Maybe that's changed. I hope so, because I would much rather have people buy it from Scott than from Barnes & Noble. But as long as they buy it.
Well.
But, I'm definitely giving a copy to the Proctorsville Library, so it'll be there. And if anybody wants to see it, that's where it'll be. But I have to say, I had so much less loneliness and boredom because of drawing and feeling, as I say, like I feel connected to everyone who looks at them, because they're seeing something that I have put out there that I feel, and they get it, and they're sending back their responses, which I get, and it feels good.
Mutual gift.
Yeah, thank you.
And I really think that this is something that we all would enjoy looking at. There are certain ones that we would not necessarily enjoy, but I think they would reflect what we were feeling.
Yeah.
I think that's true.
Let's face it, the pandemic brought out a great deal of ambiguity in everything we were doing.
Yes.
And it's the thought that it was at one point we thought, well, this will be over and done with. And now I think we're beginning to realize it's not going to be over and done with.
Apparently not.
It's going to be something that's going to be, we're all going to be living with for some time. I really appreciate the work that you put into this, and
Thank you,
I do
Ralph.
look forward to seeing them every day.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And yeah, my name on Facebook is Pets by Heart because of the animal portraits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I think in all fairness to Jane, we should mention that Jane has been very active in a number of other things besides just Stop Screaming. But I hope you are going to continue doing this.
I am going to continue as long as I have no plans to stop ever.
And as we've discussed on previous programs, she's very active with the incarcerated prisoners. Are you still at Sing Sing?
No, Westchester County Department of Corrections.
Okay.
And I saw the head of the girls' home in Proctorsville this morning, and she said they're trying to get back up and running, and I look forward to getting back to working there.
Okay, wonderful. Now, Steve, you've been very patiently sitting there waiting now. First of all, who is Steve Price?
Steve Price, the man whose teeth I brush, is a writer, an editor, once upon a time a lawyer, and someone who's been involved with horses since 1951, age 11. Learned to ride at summer camp, went to a summer camp in outside of Pittsfield, Massachusetts.
Oh, whereabouts outside?
Hinsdale.
Oh, I know that.
You know, Pittsfield, Dalton, Hinsdale,
Yeah.
whatever. And I rode at camp. My years as a camper. I spent a summer as a riding instructor at a nearby camp, nearby to Camp Taconic, and kept it riding. The high school I attended, just north of New York City, had a riding club. And that's where the girls were, and they wore tight pants in those days when girls didn't wear tight pants as they do now. And
you remember those days.
Oh, I did. And I found that I didn't have to be a great athlete to attract the young ladies' attentions. All I had to do was fall off, which I did with some regularity. And, oh, Steve, oh, does it hurt? Oh, shameless. And I just kept on riding, and I went to college, and then went to law school, and then was a lawyer at a publishing company at Random House, and went into the business side of things, and then became an editor at another house. And in 1970, the publishing house had a palace revolution, and we were all out. And I looked around for things to do, and I called 500 of my closest friends in book publishing and said, help. And they said, well, you could write books. I said, I don't know enough to write a book. And I was told, you've been in publishing long enough to know you don't have to know much to write a book. Just write about things you like. And I said, well, I like horses. They said, write about horses. So I started doing that. My first book was Teaching Riding at Summer Camps, write about things you know about. And since then, I've written, I guess, about 20 books about horses. Culminating with The Outside of a Horse, which is my memoirs, my involvement with horses throughout my life to date. The title comes from Winston Churchill's memorable line, "The outside of a horse is good for the inside of a man." And talk about keeping busy during pandemics and lockdowns. People had been after me to write down anecdotes about my life with horses. And what better time to do it than I would, lockdown, quarantine. And so that's what I did. I wrote the manuscript.
Okay. But what we're going to be talking about today is not just about horses. This is going to be some of the other works that you did, which are sort of on the humorous.
Well, I also wrote 2 books about another ruling passion, country music. I like country music, play a bit, and but the publisher of a house where I was doing, publishing house where I was doing consulting work on horses, asked whether I would compile collections of quotations, which I did. I've always liked anecdotes, and used to read myself to sleep reading Bartlett's quotations.
That sounds like a fascinating way to...
Well, it did. You can learn a little something. So I put together a whole bunch of compilations of smartest things ever said, best things ever said about horses, best things ever said about California.
Just stop right there. Now, what is the best thing you've ever heard about California?
I think Woody Allen's line about its greatest contribution to civilization was a right turn on a red light.
Okay, now, you've already commented about the smartest things ever said. Now, could you give us some examples of this?
In 3 words, I can sum up everything I've learned about life, said Robert Frost. It goes on.
It goes on. Wow.
That's true. Life is what we make it, always has been, always will be, said Grandma Moses, the artist. And then Albert Einstein, who should know about such things, said it takes an intellectual to solve a problem, but a genius to prevent one.
Oh, that is interesting. Now, what about the best advice ever given?
In the fight between you and the world, back the world.
Back the world.
Franz Kafka. If you're going to kick authority in the teeth, you might as well use 2 feet. Keith Richards, the Rolling Stone, who should know about such things? Always do sober what you said you'd do drunk. That will teach you to keep your mouth shut. Ernest Hemingway. And then this is really good advice from Arthur Ashe, the tennis player. From what we get, we can make a living. From what we give, however, makes a life. Isn't that lovely?
That is deep.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, now, you also did something about the greatest insults, put downs, and comebacks.
Yep, that was great fun. I mean, that appeals to the snarky in all of us. Ulysses Grant, before being President Grant or General Grant, entered an inn on a stormy winter's night. A number of lawyers in town for a court session were clustered around a fire. One looked up and said, "Here's a stranger, gentlemen. By the looks of him, he's traveled through hell itself to get here." "That's right," Grant admitted. "And how did you find things down there?" he was asked. "Just like here," replied Grant. "The lawyers were all closest to the fire." When British Labour Party figure Herbert Morrison remarked that he was his own worst enemy, his rival, Ernest Bevin, immediately replied, "Not while I'm alive, he's not." And then here, 2 of our favorite people. George Bernard Shaw sent Winston Churchill 2 tickets for the first night of one of his plays with a note saying, "Bring a friend if you have one." Churchill returned the tickets, saying he would not be able to attend, but would be grateful for tickets for the second night, if there is one. Great fun.
Yeah.
Great fun.
Yeah.
Okay, now how do you go about collecting these anecdotes and
The
these
web.
quotes?
The web.
I'm sorry?
The web, the internet, they're all out there. You can start with a list of people you know would be quotable. Shaw, for example, Churchill, certainly. And there are websites with funny things and smart things and quotes about California, quotes about New York. It's all out there.
Now what about quotes about Philadelphia?
Just the same, I'd rather be in Philadelphia.
Well, I believe it was W.C. Fields.
The
wasn't it?
very same. Yes. Ah, yes. Ah, yes.
Now, in putting all these things together, do you find that you need some sort of an outline of how you're going to organize them?
Very much so. Very much so.
How do you organize them?
Often by activities or disciplines. Funny things, smart things, best advice about sports, about entertainment, about education. You find broad topics and research them and look for the best quotations you can find in all those categories.
Okay. Now, do you ever do anything about politics?
I did, certainly in put-downs, comebacks, and insults. But I try to stay away from something that's contentious because we don't want a prospective book buyer to slam the book down. Or worse, like the lawyers, stay too close to the fire.
Okay, just what are your future plans on publications that you're going to work on?
I wrote a mystery novel set in the horse world. This was back in the 80s, called Riding for a Fall. And when another plot comes to mind, possibly about fox hunting, which has a vocabulary in itself and is fascinating stuff, maybe involving fox hunting or again horse showing. I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
I'll just,
But you're still thinking about doing something.
well, writers write. That's what we do.
Okay. Now, Jane, are you going to continue? I know you're going to continue with the cartoons.
Yes.
What about anything else?
Well, I have to just say something quickly about how the books were put together. There's a company called Classic Memories that is wonderful, that designed the book so beautifully, photographed the cartoons, just put it together wonderfully. And this was through the generosity of a friend, a fellow artist, who decided that these drawings had to be in a book. But I did want to give Classic Memories, Neil and Lisa, who work there, who own the company, credit that if anybody wants to put their work into a book, Classic Memories is the way to go. Okay, enough of the commercial. What was your question?
Okay, now, we've talked about your future individually. Now, what about your future together?
Well, we're going to be together forever.
Yeah. We'll be together, perhaps married. We don't know. But we're together now.
We're together
I know,
now.
You know, in this day and age, marriage seems to be like not that important.
Well, Steve said to me, "You've had enough names," but I love the fact that my grandson, my wonderful grandson Owen, calls Steve Granddude.
Oh,
I'm the grand dude.
Yeah.
You're a grand dude.
He's my fishing buddy.
Okay. Now,
Owen is, yes.
well,
Indeed.
I want to thank both of you for this. This has been a most pleasant discussion. And Jane, please continue with those drawings.
I certainly will. Thank you,
And
Ralph.
I hope you continue with your writing. And let me know when you publish your novel.
Oh, I
Yeah.
certainly shall. I should say that The Outside of a Horse, for viewers who are interested in horses or some pretty good anecdotes, even if you're not, is available from its publisher/printer, Blurb, BLURB.com. And if you just go to blurb.com and look for Stephen D. Price or The Outside of a Horse or just horses, you'll find it. And thank you.
Again, I want to thank both of you.
Oh.
Well, thank
It's
you.
been
a pleasure.
most pleasant discussion.
Wonderful.
And that's going to be a wrap for now, and we'll see you sometime in the future.